What's going on, good people? Welcome back to another episode of Trading My Live Account. Today is day number 34. It's July the 27th, 2023. We made some trades today, so let's get into it. First and foremost, the first thing we need to talk about, let's talk about all of our important levels that we have on the chart today. So we have yesterday's closing price that's represented by this blue line right here at 35,693. And then we have one zone that we drew from the pre-market, and that played an important role today also. So let's go ahead and get into today's analysis and let's see what happened. So coming into today, we came back into the zone, right? Made a low, swing low. Now this low will act as a support level throughout the day as well. But what's interesting about this swing low is that we were never able to quite come back all the way to yesterday's closing price. So that tells us that for whatever reason, there were a lot of buyers at this level and they did not want yesterday's closing price to be affected. So that gives us a good idea of why we created a higher low once we came back above the zone, created a swing high, and pulled back. So that makes sense. We had buyers down here, and then we created a higher low. So from that point forward, I was looking to go long at the bottom of the zone, but unfortunately, I was actually never able to get my order hit because I was just like 1 or 2 ticks away with my order entry. So just sat through it right here, but once we pushed up to the top of the zone and came back into it, I saw this double top get formed. And then I was like, okay, we have a double top and we're coming back into the zone. So more than likely, the zone should hold up and we should see prices come back to the bottom of it. Now, the only thing about it is that's a good idea to have, but I got to make sure that my zones are drawn on the chart the right way, because on trades 1 through 4, I went short multiple times expecting for the zone to hold. But drawing the zone is the key, because all of these times that I went short based on where I thought the zone should be. But if we go back to where the zone originated from, go back. All right, so I started this zone from the pre-market action that happened at around 3:30 this morning during the London session. So honestly, even though I drew the zone based on the top of this overall swing high, the zone should be based on the top of this wick that extends up to 755. So if we were to take the zone that we have now and extend this up to 755, look at what would happen. 755. Okay, there we go. Now look at the difference between what the zone was and now what it is. So this is the live chart, right? The one that we just fixed. Now let's go back to the screenshot. You see the difference? My entries down here, according to where I went short, were at the top of the zone based on what I thought the zone should be drawn as. But then if we look at it for the new version, my entries are actually not at the best possible point that they could be drawn at. So imagine if I had the zone drawn the right way. I would have entered my short trade from this level and would have never got stopped up. My stop would have never been hit. So that's a very important lesson that I learned right there. You always got to make sure that you trade your prices from the correct levels, because you could have the right idea, but if you drew your chart up the wrong way, you might be a couple of points off here and there. And if you have a wider stop, you might not get stopped out. But because I trade with such a tight stop, I always have to have the best possible entries, or else I risk the chances of me getting stopped out being a lot higher than they would be if I traded from a better price level. So that's a prime example of what happened on trades 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now I did catch a little bit of profit on trade 2, but I wasn't necessarily able to take it all the way to the bottom of the zone because it moved so quick. By the time I actually had a chance to close it out, it was about maybe 4 or 5 points away from where I wanted it to be. So man, it's tricky trading those zones, but I'm definitely learning some lessons for sure. And I learned a lot on trades 1 through 4. Now, when we come back to trade number 5, I shorted the zone here once again, and I took profits at the lows of the zone. So I just followed my plan right here. Once I saw prices kind of shoot down with this large red candle that came in on a little bit of a higher volume, I said, okay, more than likely we should come back to retest the top of the zone. So I put my short order where I used to have the zone drawn before we just changed it, and it came back almost to the wick perfectly. Came back, hit the bottom of the zone, was able to snag some profit off of that. So then after that, I saw one of my favorite setups start to form on trade 6. So I shorted here expecting for prices to have a successful breakout, but I was a little bit too early right here. Now, I was too early because I just got a little bit excited about the idea that I saw and the trade that I saw actually starting to form. Because if you look at this scenario right here, all right, I want you to take a mental snapshot of what happened from this swing low, from this swing high all the way down to this swing low once we hit yesterday's closing price. And I want you guys to compare that to what happened yesterday. So let's go back to what happened on the 26th. Notice how we had the same scenario from the swing high at 0.1 all the way back down to a former zone that we drew in the pre-market yesterday, where we were trading within the zone and then eventually established a lower high inside of the zone that eventually led to a breakout that you could draw a bear trend line from. And then once you broke out, you wait for prices to come back, retest support, retest that trend line, and then as prices move away, you get in for the short trade. And that's what I did yesterday on trade number 4. Only thing was I didn't hold it as far as I should. So with that in mind, today I was like, okay, I see what I'm looking at, but I just got in a little bit too early on trade 6. So even though you might have the right idea, you always want to make sure that you wait for those best possible prices. So I got it wrong at trade 6 and got stopped out. But on trade 7, I actually made the right decision. So I traded using the same idea from trade 6, but this time I entered from better prices. So you always want to wait for prices to come back to your level, and then you want to see that reaction that you were looking for, and then that's when you hop into the trade. And that's what I was able to do at trade 7. Now, I thought about potentially taking it back all the way down to yesterday's closing price, but the only reason that I got out was because if we follow this across, we had already had a problem before trying to get to that level. So I said, if we didn't get there before, I don't really want to take the chance of seeing if we can get there this time. I'm just going to trade on the level that's already there. So I think I made a good decision right there, took profit and locked it in. And that's something that I've been working on all week long, just locking in those profits. And I think I did a decent job right there. So after that, we see a double bottom start to get formed. So we see double bottom point number 1, and then we come back up, retest the zone, get rejected, and form double bottom point number 2. Come back up to the zone, get rejected once again, and then once we come back to form this higher low, this is where I took trade 8. Now this is pretty interesting because I shorted here initially after seeing what I thought was a lower high, and what I thought was a lower high was okay, so let's actually draw this up a little bit the way that I saw it back then initially. So I saw this as a double top, then followed by a lower high right here. Right here on this candle, because I basically saw prices hit the top of the zone, pull back down, push back up, and then pull back down one more time. So I'm like, okay, we've been in a downtrend overall, and let's actually just go back because we formed a head and shoulders within the pre-market, and that's actually the formation that we've been trading out of all day. So the downtrend has been pretty pronounced, and that's one of the biggest reasons I've been on the short side so much this day so far. So hold on, let me get it back. So once I saw that lower high, I'm like, oh, okay, I know exactly what's going on. I deleted it, but when I was trading it live, I actually had a trend line drawn across this area. So I took the swing high from the second point of this double top, connected that to the lower high, and then I extended it throughout the market. And as you can see, that's where I took my entry for trade 8. I went short right here at the orange triangle. But on this next candle, once this green candle closed like this, and then we created another higher low after that, I was like, oh, okay, I was definitely wrong about me thinking this was a lower high. So I got out immediately and just took a little 5-point loss right there. But I'm glad I did that because I would have definitely taken a full stop if I would have held that trade. But I think it's important right there. I think that's a good lesson that shows you that even if you have an idea about what you think might happen, if you get new information that the market presents to you and you feel like that trade is not what you should be in anymore, don't be afraid to cut that trade and just look for better opportunities. And that's exactly what I was able to do at trade 8. So good discipline right there to be able to make the, adaptation and adapt to what I'm seeing in the market. So then that led me to trade number 9. So I went long here after seeing a double bottom and a higher low. And then I held the trade to the top of the zone. So pretty much once I realized that it was actually a double bottom with a higher low that just simply came back to retest the support level of the higher low. You guys know that's actually one of my favorite types of setups, because I always say whenever I have a higher low in the market, I want to see prices come back to retest that level of support that the higher low established, and then once they do, I look to go long. So I said, okay, I missed that opportunity, but more than likely once you see that happen, that double bottom and that higher low, and then you see continuation, prices are more than likely coming back to test the next major level of resistance. So since we were trading in the zone all day, I was like, okay, I'm going to use that as my potential exit point. So I said, instead of going all the way back to the top of the zone, if this was the last previous lower high, then I should probably just aim for this level. So as soon as prices got back up to that level, I took profit after going long once prices kind of pushed back into the zone one more time. So that right there is a good trade. I just read the market, saw what was going on, didn't try and outsmart the market, just traded with the trend and did what I was supposed to do. So good trade right there. But then on trades 10 and 11, see right here, I had the right idea. But when it comes to trying to short a market, you always want to give yourself the best chance of success. And you can do that by shorting from higher prices, because the further away you short from the lows, usually the probability of you being successful increases the further away you are. So that's a big lesson I learned right there on 10 and 11. So let's read the notes real quick. I went short here after seeing a lower high get established. Good idea, but like I was telling you guys, you gotta short from higher prices, because that way you set yourself up for success. Because if this was the previous lower high that I was looking at, more than likely the market should come back to either retest the bottom of that level or retest the top of that area. So you could draw, but I would say not draw, but maybe think of it as a little micro zone from the bottom of this candle to the top. It should come back to retest that lower high in some way, shape, or form. And that's exactly what it did on this last candle right here. It came back to retest that level, and then that's when the short trade started to take off. So you can have the right idea, but you got to make sure that you get in at the right prices too. You need the right idea plus the right timing. And then on trade 12 and 13, this was really frustrating, but it was it built my confidence at the same time, even though it was disappointing, because I went short right here on both of these trades after seeing prices come back to test the previous low, and my break even stop got hit twice. And I mean, in scenarios like this, just based on the way I trade, sometimes that's just something that you got to deal with and you got to roll with when it comes to the market. Because I think overall I took great entries. You know, I shorted on the way back down, and that's one thing I wanted to talk about too. On 10 and 11, I'm shorting on the way as prices are coming up, expecting for them to fall back down. But a lot of times what I've learned is that when you're looking for the short trade, let prices come back into your level, and then as they move away and they're on their way back down, then you hop in. See, that's what I did at trade 12. Instead of shorting on the way up, I waited for prices to come back down and caught them as they were moving down. Only thing was, we moved away for a good amount of time, and then prices came back to retest my entry point, and then they immediately moved back down to what my target would have been. So that's super frustrating, but it's part of what happens in the game when it comes to trading. And on trade 13, I did the exact same thing. I came back because I was like, okay, if we're in a downtrend, we already created a lower high, came back to retest that lower high and got rejected, broke out of the zone, created another lower high once more after we broke out. So that means we have a successful breakout retest during a downtrend, coming out of an overall right shoulder for a bigger head and shoulders pattern on the higher time frame. So I'm like, everything is pointing to the downside. So in a scenario like this, we should come back to retest the previous low and then move away from it. So that was my idea for the entry point, and that's why I went short right here at trade 13 as soon as we came back up to retest what used to be previous support. So took the trade right there. It was going in my favor for a good little minute, just like trade number 12 was, but then it came all the way back, retested my entry point, hit my break even stop, and then continued to move on without me. So that's real frustrating, but Sometimes in the market, that's just the hand that you're dealt, and you have to roll with it. Now, I feel proud of myself because in situations like this in the past, when I would have felt this frustrated, I would have probably tried to chase the market and keep trading. But I just realized, like, look, I'm making good trades, but for whatever reason, it's just not working out for me today. Let me just cut my losses right here and not do something that I would regret in the future. So I think I made a really good decision of just calling it a day and not chasing it, because I felt good. Like, even though I was disappointed, I still felt good at the same time, because yes, I'm taking break even trades, and I had two really good trades that would have made great profit, but it just didn't turn out to work that way for me. So you got to roll with the punches and play the cards that you're dealt. So overall, I feel like today it wasn't the best day per se, but it also wasn't the worst. It was some simple mistakes that I made, and mistakes that I really couldn't avoid. Today, I didn't really know that I should have drew the zone in a better way. That's the first time I'm actually learning that. Most of the time, I draw the zone the correct way, but today was not the case. So, I feel like that was something that I couldn't avoid. That was the lesson that I had to learn. So, all of those losses, I accept those. I think the only losses that really stand out to me as being something that needs to be worked on are trades number 6. I hopped in way too early. You might have the right idea, but remember, wait for that confirmation. So trade 6, and trades 10 and 11. You always want to wait for confirmation. I think that's the biggest lesson I learned from these 3 losses today. Wait for that confirmation, even though your idea might be right. So I know what I need to work on going forward in the future. Now that I've done this trade review, I have a pretty good blueprint for what I need to handle tonight in my back test and practice session. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna get to it. I appreciate you guys for tuning in with me. I hope you learned a lot about choosing the right levels and drawing those zones and those resistance and support levels from the right areas, because they really do make a difference. And I'll be back tomorrow, July 28th. Let's look to close the week out on a strong note. I'll see you from either somewhere between 9:30 and 9:40 tomorrow morning. But until then, you guys, take it easy.